that the motions to reconsider be considered, made, and laid upon the table.
Is there objection?
Madam President, we talked a lot about the pandemic and all that it has brought. I'd like to take just a few moments here at the outset before I ask for full consideration, and to share with colleagues very briefly what we have faced in the state of Alaska with regards to our state's economy. We've probably taken a greater hit than any state in the country. We saw a 32% drop in revenue last year, 10% higher than any other state in the nation. We're starting to see a light at the end of the tunnel, and that's good, but we are also facing the prospect of another devastating tourist season. Back home right now, people are not talking about the season for 2021 coming up. The motto is get through to 22. That's an awful way to be approaching our situation, and so they have asked for help. They realize that anything that we can do to try to salvage even a few weeks of tourist season is going to be important to us. So Senator Sullivan and I have been working on behalf of hundreds of small businesses that rely on this essential income just so that they can scrape by for another year. A lot of people don't think about cruise ships as being an essential activity during a pandemic, but let me tell you, in our state, where so much of our economy is just based on tourism, it's an imperative. It's jobs, it's livelihoods, and it really is what allows our small communities to keep their doors open. In 2019, before the pandemic was upon us, we were looking at 1.33 million tourists that came to the state of Alaska by way of cruise ship. That's pretty significant. In 2002, there were 48 passengers. That's 48 passengers, that's not 48,000. So in other words, you had an economy that was looking pretty strong and pretty good, and it absolutely went into a free fall. Normally, the tourism industry generates more than $214 million in state and municipal revenue, more than $1.4 billion in payroll, $2.2 billion in visitors spending, and the prospect was doing nothing but going up until we were hit in 2020. The vastly diminished cruise season contributed to statewide unemployment rising from 6.2% to 11%. Southeast Alaska, greater unemployment, which increased from 4.7 to 11.3, 17% of all jobs in the region impacted. So this kind of unemployment, this kind of stress is an extraordinary challenge. So Alaskans are trying to figure out, is there a way to salvage there? And there's two points here. We're ready to welcome visitors back in the state. We are leading the country in vaccination rates. Half of all Alaskans have had their first dose, 43% are fully vaccinated. But we've got two issues that we're facing here. First is the Centers for Disease Control that have their no-sale order for the cruise industry in place. We actually got some very encouraging news just last evening. CDC has acknowledged these changing circumstances with regards to vaccination. They've updated their guidance for how to safely resume cruising, so that's good. That's a positive. But we've got a second issue, and that second issue is that Canada has a ban on allowing passenger vessels to depart from or transit through their waters. We're dealing with a law that is controlling so much of this, because in the U.S. we only allow domestically built, owned, and crewed vessels to operate on solely domestic trips. This is the Passenger Vessel Services Act, the PVSA. So we've got a situation that without a stop in Canada, a cruise to Alaska is a domestic ship. Canada has effectively been available to cruise companies that offer voyages to Alaska, not built in the United States, not crewed by U.S. citizens, not permitted to sail in Alaska without making a stop in a foreign country, because otherwise this violates PVSA. So what we're trying to do, we're trying to work with the Canadians to resolve this issue. It's been tough making headway because Canada is in a different spot when it comes to their vaccine. So we've turned to a legislative fix, a temporary legislative fix. There's a lot of different opinions on PVSA and the Jones Act. I'm not here to debate them today, but what I'm trying to offer along with Senator Sullivan is a temporary fix that'll allow the cruise ships to travel between Washington State and Alaska. Because what we're trying to do here, I'm not trying to save the cruise companies. I'm trying to save communities that are so dependent on these vessels that bring these passengers up. For them, it's critical. If we can't get some level of relief, if we can't get folks north, they've been on hold now since last year. So 14 months until we get into 2022, on top of what we've already seen, these businesses won't be there. So what we're doing is we temporarily deem that a voyage to Alaska from Washington State without a stop in Canada is by law a foreign voyage. So PVSA is not going to hold us back. I have worked with Senator Cantwell. I have worked with Senator Blumenthal to address some of the issues that they have raised, and I thank them both for their efforts to work with me. We've incorporated in this amendment 3 simple requirements, 2 of which the industry already adheres to: requiring defibrillators on ships, making sure that the Passenger Bill of Rights is publicly available, and we ask the Secretary to consider a rulemaking on how to safely return human remains in the tragic event that someone passes away on a cruise. So these are simple, common sense changes that ensure cruising is safe for passengers and for crew. So I would ask, along with Senator Sullivan and Congressman Young, I would ask the Senate to consider and pass the Alaska Tourism Restoration Act so that cruises can gain some semblance of opportunity in Alaska as they have for so long. So again, Madam President, I will restate my motion here, asking unanimous consent that Murkowski Amendment number 593 be called up and agreed to.